Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and hopefully, after this video, 619 SK does not hate me as well as Microsoft. Because we're going to be using this individual's posts. One, because it's kind of an interesting solve, I guess you could say, and some nifty little DAX in that. But also, I wanted to kind of point it out that it's got some problems in terms of how this forum post was originally framed up and presented. And it's by far, I'm not trying to pick on the individual or anything like that, because there are far worse posts on the forums. They're like, I got some data, I need to do some stuff with it. I mean, literally, that's the entire post, right? I'm like, I don't know what you're asking for. But anyway, in this one is a kind of a called out because it's posted in the Power Query forum, and it's Power Query formula for calculating if condition and calculate count from another table. And I think one of the problems that it initially has is that it assumes that this is the solution to their problem. And it actually ends up not being the solution. Actually, Power Query doesn't factor into this at all in terms of accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish, which I didn't understand initially, right? So basically, they got 20 controls coming from SharePoint. They append them together. They have a status of open. They calculate this aging category, which I guess is in days, essentially. And then they got this kind of, they sort of, I had read, and normally if I read through something once and I don't understand it, I'm moving on. Almost always, if I read through it twice and I don't understand what the ask is, I'm definitely closing and moving on to the next post, right? I don't have time for that. This one I actually read like 3 times, still didn't understand what was going on. But it's a Sunday, so I figured, I got extra time on a Sunday. It's kind of a lazy day going on. I figure I'd ask some questions. They got this kind of spray and pray data, which mistake number one, it's an image, right? I'm not going to probably answer your question if I can't copy your data and then form up a solution. Other than if I can just write the DAX, and it's probably going to have mistakes. But I've gotten pretty good at writing DAX on relatively simple problems where they don't have syntax errors and things like that, and it actually solves the problem without me having to test it. But that is not always the case. So anyway, so I basically, there's my solution. And the first question I have is, when you say calculate point, what exactly do you mean? And then, we got some discussion going on here. And I'm not the only one that doesn't understand this, because another super user chimes in like, what? And so this discussion goes on. So blah, 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 pin the table goes and why. Please post. So this was actually my second follow-up to his. It gets all screwed up in the forums, the threading and stuff like that. So anyway, in response to that one, he actually posts control A, result expected, blah. And then he has, this is my table, right? And this is, and literally, if he would have, I say he, it could be a she, I don't know. If this individual would have just posted just this to the forums, no problem, man. I'd have that answered. So once they posted this information, right, it's off to the races, right? I knew exactly what they're going for. Basically, they have this aging. You want to count up how many for control A are in a certain age category, right? That gives you your count. And then in this table down here, you can look up, say if it's count 1 and it's 0 to 15 days and it's a 100. Otherwise, if it's count 2, right, 2 and it's 90 days, then it's an 80, right? Perfect sense. Now all of a sudden, now we can get to work. So we did. So essentially, that is this one right here. So basically, what we can do is, here's the 2 tables. So I imported the table basically as is, date, status, control, aging. This one I did a little bit of manipulation to. Well, we might as well take a look at it. Not a ton of manipulation, but it's a little bit. So the table came in like this as far as source data, right? I use enter data queries for this. It had like 0 to 15 day, 16 to 13 day. This one did not have a day on it, right? So of course I'm going to rename those to get rid of the days, change some types around. And then of course you're going to want to unpivot it, right? And if that's, that's going to make everything a lot easier. So, and then I added a conditional column basically for a sort by column. So 0 to 15 is 1, 16 to 30 is 2, 31 to 90. So that's all the Power Query, but the Power Query doesn't really solve the actual problem. It's just getting the data in the right format in order to be able to solve the problem. All right, so we'll close that down. So once we have that, right, we can put our control here in a slicer, and then we can put our attribute from our point logic into a table visual. And now we need to calculate the number of open, right? So that's a pretty simple. Right, so what I do, there's probably other ways to do this, but what I do is, okay, I'm going to grab my age category, right? So it's either 0 to 15, 16 to 30, etc. I'm then going to add a column to my table of what the rows that are in context. I'm going to add an age category column to it, where I just use a simple switch statement, switch true. If the aging is less than 16, then 0 to 15, aging is less than 31, and 16 to 30, aging is less than 91, 31 to 90, and then otherwise it's greater than 90. And these values in here actually match like the aging categories, correct? Right. So now what I can do then is I can just do a count rows where I filter my table variable where the age category matches the age category variable. So that's the age category is the actual age category that I just created in that add column statement, right? And then I add a 0 to because they look like they wanted to have, otherwise the other ones aren't going to show up, right? They're going to show up as blank and they won't be included in the table. So just add a 0, that way make sure they show up. Okay, so that gets us our open, right? So now we have 1, 2. So now we need our points, right? The points, again, is pretty simple. So I grab my open measure, right? So now I know the count, 1, 0, or 2. And my age category, I say, grab me the max point logic attribute, right? So I know my age category. So now what I can do is just basically do a lookup into a table. Max XX, I filter my point logic table where the number of count equals open, and the attribute is equal to the age category, return the value, and then that returns me my point value, right? And so there's the entire solution. One of the things that I forgot to point out was that one of the things that they did was they had in their table, right, when they had in the source for point logic, they originally had 0 or 1. Okay, so but when I did the enter data query for this, I actually just copied this row and put it in as a 0 row. So otherwise, you're going to have a text column here, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems trying to compare and everything else. Better to just duplicate the data, and with the Vertipack engine, it's going to compress these all up anyway. So there's only you're going to have very low cardinality. This is the only one that you're going to have like a higher cardinality on, but that's going to compress up really well. So instead of making your life miserable and having making this text and having 0 to 1 and then 2 and 3 and any of that sort of stuff, easier to just duplicate the row, right? So that is all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. SK and 619 SK. Sorry if I drug your name through the mud, but we got your problem solved, and that's the important part. So that's all I had for the show. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.